Hi, welcome
Okay.
to A Word with Kelly Scott Reed. I'm here with Wayne McCray. Great to see you. Welcome.
Yay! Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's taken us a while. It's taken us a while to get this on, just through schedules and being busy, but I've really looked forward to this. You're someone whose work I've gotten the honor of being able to preview, um,
Right.
publish through the Rough on Y'all Press. And I was really
Right.
happy, and I kind of kept bugging you to come talk to
Oh,
us
that's okay.
because, okay, I'm really happy that you're here. Could you tell us where you're coming to us from?
Well, I'm coming from a small town called Idabina, Mississippi. It's in the Mississippi Delta. I'm kind of squeezed between two major cities, which is Memphis, Tennessee, 2 hours away, and Jackson, Mississippi. Um, the Delta is mostly known for blues. Probably the most famous resident is B.B. King, but also Jerry Rice. I'm not that far from Mississippi Valley State University. But for the most part, it's mostly farmland. So I call it the boondocks. It's not real. My nearest neighbor is about a mile away. Um, I help take care of my mom. We sit on about 4 to 5 acres of land, and we're surrounded by nothing but farmland.
Oh,
So
wow.
for me to have any type of reasonable conversation, even on the academic level, is a chore. It's a very hard thing here for me because I've spent most of my time working with the National Park Service for an extended period of time. I've done like some extensive traveling. I loved living in Alaska. I love Boston because it's a very pedestrian city. And just being in certain locales all over the planet, I've picked up on some things. I listen to how people speak, provide information, and I guess I've taken a lot of that stuff and I've internalized it, and I've just used it in a variety of stories, and
Mhm.
just try to bring them to life. And
I was going to say, I
what's
think your dialogue is what really does it to me. I think I've told you that before, that when I
right,
hear your characters speak to each other, um, it's very personal. It's very real. There's no wasted words. I love the way you write dialogue, and it really propels character. And you do it in a way that's not overly wordy, where it's over explaining. You're very able to bring forth through verbiage, through how you describe a character. Um,
right.
so, is it through you, like you said, your traveling experiences you've received that, or do you have family that are writers, or is this something that you've always
No,
done?
no. I would probably consider myself probably the only writer in the family. But there are members of my family that are professionals that have done other things. My mom was once a nurse. She's retired now. I have cousins. I mean, I come from a very large family. I have cousins that work for and been in the Marine Corps, CIA, FBI. They don't do anything. So I mean, they go the whole. They cover the whole range from from bad to good. But I think that's in all families.
Yep.
And but mostly when it comes down to oral history, I just listen to people speak. Um, Whether I'm at the grocery store, I may hear two women having a conversation. I call it ear hustling, where I actually I'll listen to their conversation and I say to myself, I like the way how she said that. I can use that in the story. And I may get home, I may jot it down, and it may stay dormant for months. And then I may write a story and I may be flipping through my pages and I say, oh, where's that word or that sentence I heard this lady use? And I say, there it is. And then I start developing a conversation where between two or more people, I say, well, how can I go about using this particular language? And then I just go ahead and just let it flow. And sometimes I may not like the sound of it after I read it, and I'll go back and I may make some edits to it to make it more personal, to make it seem more real that that's the everyday conversation that you're here on the street from someone or just from someone in general. And I just go from there. And I mean, storytelling, how can I say this, is a little bit just part of the overall African culture. I mean, you always hear the stories about people at barbershops and so forth, but for me personally, it's just guys just hanging out, just clowning. And I mean, I have a wealth of stories in my head, some good, some bad. Some I probably won't tell just because the subject matter. But But from those experiences, I understand people's oftentimes their motivations, what makes them want to say those particular things. And I try to say it in a way that it cuts through the BS.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That when a person says something, they're like, I know someone like that.
Yeah,
and I know,
exactly.
and I've said it in those particular terms. I mean, same way when I sent you the story to read pertaining to the breastfeeding. And
I love that. I loved that.
And you know, I was watching TV and I was saying to myself, like, hey, there's issues out there, and I said they're not really being addressed. And all the literature that I was reading out there, people was just being very germane, very scientific about it. I said, but no one had really written a story about it. So I said, I'm going to take a chance to write a story about it and put in some complications. You know, I have a few friends, they're upset because the guy got 2 women pregnant. And I explained to them that I said, hey, that's life.
Those things particularly. It happens.
You know, I thought that it should be that, from my experience dealing with a certain brand of women, that I wanted to, when you said that you disliked her because, you know, she immediately left from looking for baby formula to come jump on his case and to get on him about the decision he made. Mm-hmm. And you said it didn't really become clear to you until she spoke to her mother and she explained to her the overall history of wet nursing.
Yes.
And
100%.
And I just felt that, and then, you know, your response to it was very touching as well. And I just thought that, I said, hey, I think I may have hit home with this particular story. And when you asked for it, I had really no problems with handing it to you. And I figured that you and the other two are going to push our fine pointers on it and edit it and make it available to the masses to read. And hopefully they'll enjoy it as much as we do.
Yeah. And honestly, with that particular story, and I think I shared with you that happened in my family, where
Correct.
I had an aunt who had to do that. But because the history is not in my family, the past that you brought in, it was an educational piece. And I think you do that a lot. You write your female characters really well. They're diverse. They're multifaceted. They're not stereotypical. And I really appreciate that. You very much. Yeah, I really like that. And you sent one recently about Earth Mother that really touched me.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And so there's a lot that you have to say that you say well. Now, where did that come from for you? When did you start writing?
Well, quite honestly, my background is originally in history. That's where I got my master's degree in. And it was mostly primarily slave history. So I know a great deal about slave history just here in America or in the Americas. And then when I was in a graduate program at LSU, one of my professors didn't really like the way how I wrote. He felt that my writing at the time was a little bit more flowery. He wanted me to be a little bit more cutthroat with my language, a little bit more direct. And as a result, he asked me to transfer to their comparative literature department. and I just took it as a look that he said, well, he said, you're bright, but he said the way that you go about writing, you could be much better at comparative literature than anything. And as a result, I spent 2 years in the comparative literature program at LSU. And I learned a lot from the teachers. They liked my writing style. They thought it was something very different. And it also broadened my horizons on a whole lot of other books that I probably would never came in contact with. I have my favorites. I know today I had, when James Baldwin had died, and I was mentioning my version of Mount Rushmore, which I use Kilimanjaro, is that I have them because I feel that they were the guys that scorched the earth, allow all the other writers to be able to learn, use their particular techniques, and grow. I mean, a lot of people really don't give Zora Neale Hurston credit for Their Eyes Are Watching God and how she went about showing the strength of Black women, and that was in Florida. So, and at that time being, there hasn't been really a whole lot of literature about Florida history and just the strength of Black women coming up during that particular time period. And I just like most of those particular people because they were part of the WPA, where they actually served as ethnographers and cultural anthropologists, and went out and actually interviewed people and gathered a whole lot of that information in order to write a lot of the literature, books, poems, and so forth that influenced my life as well as others. And I thought that was pretty cool. And so those particular 4 people will always sit on the top of the throne for me. No disrespect to all other writers out there. Right. They're my Kilimanjaro.
No, I love that. I love that. Now, are there, and so you have those on your Kilimanjaro. What was the first book that you read that you kind of fell in love with, that you were on fire for?
It's definitely Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. Primarily because the characters in there remind me of a lot of stuff that I had studied in history, like Ross the Destroyer, the president of the university that he's attended, that reminded me of Booker T. Washington, because there's a segment in Black literature and Black culture where you have kind of 2 opposite forces, where you have, like, say, for example, Booker T. Washington versus W.B. Du Bois. You have the idea of the person who is trying to pull himself up by the bootstraps. Then you also have what is considered the elite class. And they're having 2 different ideas about how to create the perfect or the better Black person. And then when you think even further back into that particular history, when you think about Malcolm and Martin, you still had that dichotomy, where you had one person who was looking at it from a civil rights aspect, that we should do it non-violently, while you had another person who necessarily didn't advocate for violence, but felt that you should be a little bit more proactive in some of the decisions you're doing as for protecting your own physical being. So, as a result, since those things have always been around, I also applied them into our overall culture, because I think that a great deal of American history has been developing based on slavery. Same way when I even looked at Rumble that you had recommended.
Yeah,
and some of the stuff I had, some of the stuff I knew. I mean, I have friends who are related to the Mardi Gras Indians, and believe me, those guys protect their beadwork. They don't show their beadwork to anyone until they actually come out on Mardi Gras. And when they showed on the Rumble with the flambeaus coming out, and most people don't know that it's almost like the Day of the Dead, where people sleep in cemeteries in skeletal outfits, because I've been a skeletal before, and we wake up in the morning, we let the Treme community know that it's Mardi Gras and it's time to party. So, I just take all those particular things and I just weld them into stories, and that's where most of my background comes. Some days I get good at it. That's why I always put out my morning muse, because normally if I put out the morning muse, I'm writing or reading. And that was my motivation. That's normally my motivation that morning. No, and it's just that person just comes to my head. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to Roberta Flack in the morning, or I may listen to Peter Tosh, or I've even listened to Elvis in the morning as for motivation, because there's oftentimes there may be a word in a song or something that person has said, or just the image of him that'll help me develop an overall character, Black or white, into what I need him to be in this particular story.
Now, you talk about your motivations being music. If you weren't writing, what type of art would you use to express yourself?
I'm a big Pollock fan. I love Pollock. I mean, because there's no center, there's no starting point. There's just, it reminds me almost like the universe, that although we don't know where the edges are, but we know that there's a group of colors, imagery that exists there, but we're not sure of its overall origin and starting point. So Jackson Pollock is probably one of my most favorite artists as a result, because there's no beginning, that we just know that it exists. And as a result, he produces a remarkable amount of work. So I've always liked him. At one point in time, I used to be an artist. I used to draw and so forth. And as I got older, it eventually got away from me because I was doing other things. But thankfully, my grandson has picked up the pen or the pencil, and we talk about comic books. It's nice talking to a grandkid about comic books and superheroes and everything else. And sometimes you have to correct him on how the Marvel universe and the DC universe actually works.
Grandpa's gonna school you on the universes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, most definitely. I told him, it made him think one time, because I told him, I said, most people don't realize that a lot of the heroes as well as villains are either geniuses, billionaires. They're the elite. Even Spider-Man, Peter Parker's not a dumb kid. I mean, Tony Stark is a billionaire. Batman is a billionaire. And are there aliens? I mean, Wonder Woman is not considered human. She's a goddess. Mm-hmm. Superman is an alien. So, always remind him, I said, most of the guys who are human don't have superpowers. I said, unless they have lots of money, and lots of brain capacity.
Do you remember the superhero movie Unbreakable, the M. Night Shyamalan film? It was like Bruce Willis was in it, and Samuel L. Jackson. And Samuel L. Jackson played the Glass Man, and it was like a superhero trope, but it was done in like a normal supernatural setting. It just made me think of that, because it was the first time I saw a superhero was just a normal guy. It was the Bruce Willis character was unbreakable. He was in all these accidents. He couldn't be killed. And that the bad guy was just a normal guy, a guy who had a disability, and was trying his best to figure out why that other guy got to be unbreakable while he was the Glass Man. So I just thought that that's the only time I ever saw that in a comic or a superhero villain and hero aspect. But I always thought that was interesting.
Oh yeah, I mean, thinking about movies, my movie choices are kind of peculiar. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, if I watch a movie, it's because sometimes it's for dialogue. It's not always for action, because I'm looking at how the characters interact with each other, and then there may be a scene that may remind me of something. I say, "Hey, that was pretty cool." And there's some movies I haven't even seen that I have saved in Netflix that I said I'm going to eventually get to. I said, I still haven't watched The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. I said I have to get to that. Mm-hmm. I still haven't watched Idi Amin with I can't even think of his name, because he does The Godfather of Harlem, Forrest Whitaker.
Oh yeah,
So I mean, there's just certain stories that's out there that I like to watch. Now, recently, I just finished watching Miss Didion, the writer, and also Hulu had my other favorite writer, Kurt Vonnegut, where they did a documentary on him, and it was pretty cool too, and I loved it. I didn't realize his family actually owned a hardware store in Indianapolis, which was pretty cool. And
I got to see that.
Oh yeah,
there's so much out there.
I'm not sure if it's still on Hulu, because I've learned that if you don't save it, it'll disappear on you. It's hard to find it and get it back. So anytime I watch a movie,
all of a sudden you're looking for it, and then they'll charge you.
Right. I don't like being charged. I pay enough already for the streaming services, so I figured I don't need no additional fees given to them.
Now, do you find anything that gets in your way of your writing? You seem like you're obviously disciplined. You have your morning, your wake up, your song, and you start your writing. Is there anything that gets in the way?
Myself. I mean, there are times, and I think it's like that with a lot of writers. I mean, wow, I'm just making an assumption. Sometimes I could write a paragraph, and by the time I write it, I'm like, that sucks. And I would go back and rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it. And then, I say to myself, you know what, either I'm sucking in a whole lot, or we're going to have to make a decision on how I'm going to write this first paragraph. And my process is a little bit weird. To me, I believe I always have an ending to all my stories. I know how they're going to end. I like the journey to get to that conclusion, because then it allows me an opportunity to weave in other ideas and stories to get to that final conclusion. And I never know how I'm going to start the story, but I do know how it's going to end. And for me, that helps me with my writing. I know some people may have it inverted, but for me, I have the conclusion, and then I just begin from there. And I just say, let's see how I'm going to get there.
I see that working in your writing, because I also see when I'm reading what you write, I'm seeing other ideas that could branch off, sequels, as it were, from what you've already written. Do you do that on purpose? I don't know if you do that on purpose, but I do see that.
I know I had a story recently published by Green Hills Literary, and the professor there, the story was called Meeting Homeless. And he told me, he said I should have tried to expand that into a book, because he said I left so much out of it related to, he said, okay, these two people are homeless. How did they live? I said, you left us that information out, and you've provided us with so much information that we should know, like, was his life real hard in New Orleans? What you had to do? You had mentioned that he played chess, cards, he did a whole lot of stuff, and he's handicapped because he can't depend upon social services and a whole lot of things. He said you can weave, he said you can actually build upon that. He said right now, he said you have a lot of bone and very little meat, and you can put a lot of meat on that particular bone. Mm-hmm. So I told myself I would give it a thinking over. I haven't come to any conclusion, but I did make a promise to myself that on my birthday, I was going to start on a book and have it finished by my next birthday. I just haven't made a decision on what. I have a few ideas, homeless being one, but there's a couple other stories that I have out there that I'm waiting to see if they get published or not, because I have a couple in a couple of contests. One with Diladon, and I think another one may have been with I think Galileo Press. And I'm see what type of feedback, if I make the cut, see if there's any outside the monetary award, but just see where it's at, and just go from there. Right now, I think that trying to work on my.
Yeah, and I think that you do have a lot of characters, and I'm sometimes going, oh, I want to know more about that. I want to know more about that, because you make them interesting. You want more. That's a good thing. Right. There's not really a ton of peripheral characters. They're all meaningful to the story, and they all come in with a different personality, so that you get a little vibe from each. And I'm like, oh, I'd like to know more about this. Or I think it was, I can't remember the name of the person, but it was Senior. I had asked you about, like, give us more of that Senior character.
It may have been if it was Senior, it's probably I'm not sure if that was the Abbas Abdullah story, or
it was the fire. It was the riot fire story.
You're talking about my friend, the political arsonist.
Yes. Yeah.
You're talking about my friend, the political arsonist. Yeah, that's that story is kind of interesting, because, I mean, you understand about the things related to Black Lives Matter, but I wanted to put a spin on it based on those two dichotomies I had mentioned earlier between like King and Malcolm, and I felt that here's a young man who has two interesting parents who they're not technically arsonists. I mean, activists. They're radicals, and I tried to present her in a fashion that the reason that she's not like that anymore is because she lost her husband. She has to raise their two sons, but because she is who she is, and the type of household, even with the grandmother who teaches them all about their history, about their self-worth, and so forth, the older son has internalized that and just feels that there's so much happening in the world that his mom is in a position to do something about it because she's done it before. And if she doesn't do anything about it, he will. but he wants to do it in a way that he profits from it without taking anyone's life. And, you know, that's how I have the story going the way it's going, where it ends with him actually helping burn down the city, but he comes home with,
right.
you know, but he comes home a rich man, you know, and to a certain extent, that's also a kind of, how can I say it, an undercurrent or underlined or an example of sometimes how capitalism gets started and how other people benefit from a capitalistic system. And I just thought that was just one play that we know over in just American history, that there's always been robbing, pillaging, and killing in order to make a buck, in order to put forth an idea. And sometimes they are good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're short-lived, sometimes they're long-lasting. And I just want to present him in a position where, you know, his mom tells him at the dinner table that he wants to go down and burn down the guy's house that shot the guy. And she's like, oh, no, we're not going that far. You know, please don't. You know, and that's how I end the story, because I want him to promise that he's going to keep his activities close to the vest and only going to go to those particular extremes when it's absolutely necessary. And although no life should be taken, but he feels that when it is, that the state should be held accountable for allowing such behavior to go unchecked for so long.
Do you have any, how do I say it, an energizing feeling when you write, or does it drain you? Is it like a cathartic feeling, or do you have energized?
Oh no, I'm energized. I mean, to be honest with you, I kind of have a lofty goal, and I think I'm a slow writer. I try to write a story a month, even if it's an outline version. I mean, I have maybe 15 stories that are just outlined that I haven't even gone back to, because I'm either rewriting ones that I've worked on to make them publishable, or they're going through an editing process. And then there's times where I may take two stories and I may say, you know what, they're similar, I can combine them, and I will actually deconstruct them and then rewrite them. I know recently, me and a fellow colleague at my former university had an interesting conversation where he considered me a minimalist in my writing style. And I didn't take it as an insult. I took it as a compliment. I mean, hey, I said, he had mentioned a couple of guys, and I know Francois had asked me earlier, because what happened, did I know any live minimalists at the time being? I told him, so right now, all of them are dead right now. I said, that's Raymond Carter, who I'm looking at. So I told him, I said, I haven't really got an opportunity to read any of the living ones. But I told him, I said, I'm working on that to help expand and build upon my particular writing style, where I don't have to use flowery language, but I can use very precise, very articulate language that still explains the person, the place, and the thing. And I kind of write notes to myself, and I try to, when I'm writing a story, I try to always go back to my notes, because I normally, for me, it's kind of funny, I draw them out. I use a diagram where I will actually, and that may be because I'm a Hitchcock fan, because Hitchcock used to draw cartoons and say, okay, this guy's going to be going from here to there. And it helps me with my writing, where I say, okay, I need you to get from here to there so I can get from there to here. And so I will actually draw out, and I will say, okay, the lady's going to be riding the bike or doing whatever to come here. She's going to bump into these particular group of people. This type of dialogue is going to take place. And that's just something that I like doing. It makes it easier for me to write. And if I get stuck, I say to myself, then, you know, I either need to include something into my diagram or take something out. And but for the most part, I try to stick to those particular things. And thus far, they're working well for me, I think. I mean, I'm not the greatest writer, you know, but I think I'm improving on a daily basis. And I think that some of the things I like to talk about gets people attention, because I mean, I think with every writer they receive rejection letters for whatever reason. I don't let that bother me. I tell people that online. I say, what's a rejection letter? I like a half a cup of coffee. You know, I said, I mean, you know, I mean, put Splenda sugar in it, refill it, just keep on going. I mean, if you're going to be a writer, that's just something that you have to grow accustomed to, that's going to be out there. You're going to receive critics. You're going to have criticism. You're going to have people say that your work suck or whatever it is. You should be above all that. You should be able to power through it, do what you like to do, write it. And as I always say, you should be, or like I'm quote Bruce Lee, you ought to be like water. You ought to be able to flow, change with circumstances. One day you might be ice. Next day you might be water. Next day you might be snow. Next day you may be rain. You must move with and go with the flow at that particular time. And that helps you for me, it helps me get through the day. So I never let anything bother me. I never let anything get me down. And I don't get overly concerned with a lot of, I mean, because I see a lot of people on Twitter, they get upset when they get a rejection letter. I'm like, really? I'm like, really? I mean, if you're an A student, you get a C, okay, you got a C. Get over it. It's not the end of the world. I mean, just get another A on your next paper. If you get a B plus, then you might have some concerns, maybe. I don't know. but
yeah,
you know, but
yeah.
I feel
honestly, I get what you're saying. And I try that, you know, for me, it's a little easier said than done. As a yoga instructor, we're always telling people it's not perfect. There's no such thing as perfect.
Right.
There is, do what you have with what, to quote Arthur Ashe, I'm pretty sure this is Arthur Ashe, right. Do what you can with what you have where you are. So I agree. If you're putting that energy in, which I know you do, when I read, I can tell you're being your authentic self, which is important in an author. And when you're reading your work and others that I've read, oh my gosh, we so many great people out there in the Twitter literature world, but in general, right. Where they're being their authentic self. And it may not just say be my favorite type of writing someone will bring to me, but I can see its value because I can see the author in terms of what their method is, what they're saying, and there's importance to their words. And I think if you can keep in mind, not that your words are important, and to get them out there, someone is going to hear them. It may not be the big top publisher. It may not be, you know, I'm saying Random House. I don't know what the publishers' names are, but having just someone's going to read it.
I think all of us as writers, we have our own bucket list of accomplishments. And some people buckets are bigger than others. Some people may have entire tubs. I mean, right now, I've fulfilled some of my bucket list. I said my first story that I've ever published, I said was by Wingless Dreamer. And I remember that it was a 500-word story, and that was my first story that I had ever written. And I remember I must have rewritten that story hundreds of times. And when it was published, I was like, hey, I could do this, you know. And then when I won a small contest, it was just a $25 fee. But I loved it because, you know, I said, hey, I got paid for a piece of work. And what was so funny about it, I don't know if I could say this on Zoom, but the story pertained to a minister dying at the hands of a succubus. I mean, she gave him a, you know, fellatio and sent him on his way. And
that's the most gentlemanly way that's ever been said.
Well done, Wayne. That was perfect.
You know, and that story, you know, helped me win a few dollars. And I said, hey, I may be onto something here. And the guy said, he said, and believe it or not, that's actually part of that story is based on a true story that happened not far from where I lived at. So So I used that incident and I wove it into that particular story, and I already knew how I wanted it to end. But it was just like I said, it was just a matter of me getting there. And I just felt that I wanted to use mythology as part of that, because the succubus has always been known as to send people on their way. Taking them out. Normally, in this instance, she didn't take him out while he was asleep. He was, wide awake and thriving. But and there's always there's always this inside joke in the Black community. I say, with a lot of Black ministers, being Flanderers and everything else. And I just felt that, he got to see, his savior in the best way possible. And I just felt that I just felt it just fit the entire story, and that's how it ended.
That's hilarious. Well, Wayne, could you let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter,
yes.
on Facebook?
On Twitter, my handle is jbird at writing absurdly, and I came up with that because I was writing absurdly a lot of stories every month. So that was that on. I think my handle on Instagram may be jbird_writing_absurdly. And my last one is when I know that sometimes I put out material and not everyone doesn't have access to it. I use Bookricks as a means to post those stories on, and I do it for free. So that way, no one has to worry about paying 99 cents or anything else, or trying to find the article or the journal that may have been taken down off a website over a period of time. And also, I provide on Bookricks the information, including the cover, the person who edited my story, including yourself. Your name is on there, and it's just to give everyone credit for that particular work, because I think that's well deserved. I try not to take anyone's imagery, ideas, or anything else without giving them just due. And I think that's sometimes it's lost in the writing biz that I've been noticing, where people are actually just going around plagiarizing a whole lot of other people's work. And because I've read a story where someone was kicked off Twitter for submitting a plagiarized story, and I was like, wow. I was like, man. So I just try to be true to myself, try to come up with things original, sometimes outlandish. And I think that may be the Camus side of me, because I know Albert Camus was into a lot of wild stuff, and I think that fits my personality. I think that we shouldn't start off our day with our mother dying, but we should see that there's always going to be there's a sunny day ahead, and we just need to go through it and move on. And so there's just certain people who I like reading, and that are kind of sensational. That's kind of sensational. So,
well, I so appreciate you being here with us. This has been awesome. I so appreciate you.
It's not a problem. Like I said, I wasn't sure what to expect. I was nervous. I will admit to that. I wasn't sure what because you were supposed to send me some questions, but I
decided not to. I did not decided I wasn't gonna. I was gonna free form it, because I asked you the questions, but they were woven into the conversation. I just think it works a little better, because you're really speak beautifully in terms of how you articulate what you're saying to people, both with your writing and how you're speaking to us out. Like, there's just a lot, and I don't want to stifle it with a question. Do you know what I mean?
That's not a problem. I could pull off Eddie Murphy or Richard Pryor every now and then and get around the particular question. I think I can manage that. But
no, we did questions. You just didn't know they were in there. I did all the questions that I normally send people. Okay. I just said, let's just talk. And part of it is, and again, it feels, because I've read a lot of what you've written, I feel very much like, I get to talk a lot about what you're writing, which I really enjoyed more. For me anyway, it was all about me.
Mm.
I really
Now,
want to hear.
now
what
your
you had to
friend
say.
on the other end, I wish she would smile more. Every time I look up, she has this deadpan face and looking at when she's taking a
Wayne,
picture.
that's my
And I'm
face.
saying to myself,
Wayne, that's just my face.
okay, smile. See, that's what I'm saying. Smile more. That's what I'm talking about right there. Smile more. I said to myself, I looked at her and I said, she doesn't even smile when she's smoking a cigarette at 20. I said, she is so serious all the time.
That's a Twitter callback.
Twitter callback.
I said to
Oh
myself,
my God.
like, wow. I was like, wow. But your yoga impresses me for the simple fact that I know that yoga is a very serious way to calm yourself, kind of get yourself centered. And I think that's a good thing. Too bad I can't do that all the time. I mean, I need to lose a few pounds.
Listen, I can tell you for sure, it doesn't work. No, I'm kidding. I'm the most hyperactive human being. I'm so hyper, but all the yoga instructors are hyper that I know. Like we're all like this. Yeah. But it's, I do it because I do need for the mental health capacity about it. I have ADHD big time, and it really helps me center and focus. And I love teaching. I like being in front with people, and I like talking to all different types of people. So
well, another thing that you could try something. I mean, I'm not sure what's your closest neighbor, but at one point in time, I used to get up in the morning, walk outside. I mean, because I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and I always just scream at the top of my lungs, just to let it all out. Then I come in, have me a cup of coffee, scrambled eggs, and get my day going. I figured that I said once I finish screaming at the world, I'm good to go. Let's go ahead and get things rectified and go ahead and start putting down some words.
With a scream. Okay, that's going to be the Wayne McCray quote. It's good at the beginning. It's going to say, "Start with a scream. Start every day with a scream."
Start every day with a scream, because I mean, sometimes you wake up in the morning, you're so stressed out, except from a girl, you're so stressed out, and sometimes you just want to go out and have a safe space that you can just release it all and then say, okay, I'm good. Let me go ahead and get my day started. And then if someone comes to bother you, you can let them know that I said, don't have me scream at you, because I said you won't like it if I scream, because I've already given one for the day, so I don't want to have to repeat it again. But that's just always been my particular thing.
We will get together again soon. I think the press, you got to come join us sometime on one of our little prompt things. We have a little prompt cocktail hours. Should join us sometime.
Yeah, I saw those things. Yep. You three ladies get dangerous.
You'll get to see me smile more because I'll be drunk.
We'll see. I'll take you up on it. I may just have Guinness, but because I'm a Guinness
I'm
person.
all about the Guinness. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so
thank
so
you
whenever
so
you
much
have the
for
next
joining.
one, hey, I love you. Thank you for being kind to me. Hope to see you all again in the future. And
Wayne,
and you all have
you.
a good day, and y'all stay blessed.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, Wayne.
Bye,
It
Wayne.
was so
Thank
nice
you so
seeing
much.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.